All right, good morning, everyone. We have quorum, so I'm going to call this meeting on February 16th, 2023 for the Community Planning and Economic Development Standing Committee. I'm going to call the meeting to order. We'll start with land acknowledgement that the Halifax Regional Municipality is located in Mi'kma'ki, the ancestral and traditional lands of the Mi'kmaq people. The municipality acknowledges the peace and friendship treaties signed in this territory and recognizes that we are all treaty people. So we have here from CPED, we have Councillor Blackburn, Councillor Smith, Councillor Austin, Councillor Purdy. Tim, I think, is away. He sends his regrets. And we have joining us Councillor Lovelace and Councillor Daigle-Gammon. Welcome to CPED. We'll start with approval of the minutes from January 19th, 2023. Is there a mover for the minutes? Councillor Austin, a seconder? Anyone going to second the minutes? Councillor Blackburn, thank you. Approval of the order of business and approval of additions and deletions.
There's been no additions or deletions from the clerk's office, but could we also get a vote on the approval of the minutes, please?
Oh, I thought we did. We had Councillor Austin. Oh, we didn't go. Oh, yeah. All in favor part? Yes. Okay. All in favor? All right. Excellent. Okay, there we go. And then approval of the order of business. There's no additions or deletions. We approve the order of business. Approval of the order of business. Councillor Austin, seconder. Councillor Smith. Any business arising out of the minutes?
We also get a vote on the order of business, sorry.
Oh, gosh, okay. I keep forgetting. All in favor, please. All in favor? Thank you. Okay. Business arising out of the minutes? No. Call for declaration of conflict of interests? There are none. Motions of reconsideration, none. Motions of rescission, none. Consideration of deferred business, none. Notices of tabled matters, there are none. Correspondence, petitions, and delegations. Has there been any correspondence received?
No correspondence have been received from the clerk's office. No petitions either.
Okay, thank you. Presentations. So we do have one presentation this morning from the Wanderers Lawn Bowls and the Wanderers Block of the Halifax Commons. We have Tim Breenan, Vice President of the Wanderers Lawn Bowls Club, on the agenda here. Hello, welcome to CPED.
Thank you very much.
You'll have 10 minutes to speak, and the clerk will keep track of time and has these nice little signs here now, a yellow sign and a red sign, just to keep you on track. And after your presentation, there'll be an opportunity for members of CPED to ask you questions. So welcome, and yeah, begin.
Great. Well, and thank you so much for the opportunity to speak to the committee today. Hi, my name's Tim Brennan, and I'm a volunteer with the Wanderers Lawn Bowls. We are a 100% volunteer organization with a mandate to provide an opportunity for Haligonians to be active, social, and connect with the community. Bowls at the Wanderers ground started as part of the Wanderers Amateur Athletic Club, which is a strong presence in the sporting community starting here in the late 1800s. After building a green on the Wanderers grounds, the Wanderers Lawn Bowling Club opened in 1887, and other than a short gap of play during the World War I, where the club was giving up our grounds to the Army, there has been bowls on the Wanderers grounds almost consistently for the past 136 years. Now, during these years, we've had a rich history of developing bowlers of all ages and abilities and helping them reach major success in the sport. As one of the largest clubs in Canada, in 2022, we have been the proud home of provincial and national champions, as well as 2 of our members represented Canada at the Commonwealth Games this past summer in Birmingham. The sport of lawn bowling has been growing rather significantly the past few years, with the membership range between 9 and 90. Our membership age average has been getting younger as we find more and more people are looking for healthy, active social interactions. With our inexpensive membership, we have 200 members already signed up for 2023, and our season starts in late May and runs to October. Now, during the season, with the help of our volunteer members, we host numerous community events, including fundraisers for Children's Wish Foundation, school groups, and others, as well as making time for other senior social groups here in our community, such as the Shabukta Lynx. And this September, the Wanderers grounds will be the home of the Canadian Mixed Pairs Championships. This is really a testimonial to the quality of the work that our Halifax Parks and Recs partners have done in maintaining the top quality of our playing fields all season so that we could get approval at the national level. And we'd like to take a moment to thank Parks and Rec for all the work they've done to keep our grounds as they are. Along with the support of our neighbors, the Wanderers FC, the football club, we're also looking forward to a very successful event, as they're going to be helping us along with logistics as well with the event. So back in November, you heard a presentation for a proposed Victorian greenhouse, and in that presentation, it was indicated that we would have to move to meet the needs of the Victorian greenhouse as envisioned. Recently, all parties of the Wanderers blocks have met, and we seem to be moving cooperatively in a way where we can exist together on the same block, while making a space more accessible to the public. Now, while it seems we're moving in the right direction to meet the needs of all parties, our purpose today is to ensure the committee is aware of our existence and hopefully take our needs into consideration when considering large initiatives such as the greenhouse proposal. And assuming that all parties can move to an agreement, we hope that council will be supportive and can move on it relatively short order. So thank you for your time, and I'm happy to take any questions if there are any.
All right, thank you very much for that presentation. Any questions from anybody? Councillor Smith.
So, wait, you go first. No, you go first. No, you go first. I guess we both really want to talk to you. Thank you for being here. I just, question clarification related to the presentation. So you mentioned the plan that the Commons Advisory Committee, is that the group?
We've been meeting with Robert Pace's group. We've met with the Wanderers FC, with all the other, and the Bengals Lancers,
Right.
so all the other residents as it is on the.
And the
Wanderers
plan
block.
you're referencing is the one that came from which group?
You had, you had a presentation here
Yes.
back in November.
Yes.
Yeah, that was from the Greenhouse Group.
Okay, so I just want to make sure that, all right, so
Yeah.
we weren't confused. So yeah, so you're speaking of in maybe way when you come, you can confirm whose plan that was, because that's where I was a little lost. The only question I had for you was when that was created, were you part of those initial discussions, or you kind of found out when everybody else found out?
I found out from this committee.
Okay, all right, that's all I was wondering. Thank you.
Councillor Mason.
Lindell and I are over here doing our best Stadler and Waldorf imitation. No, you go over there. What is even going on? So thank you very much for coming, Tim, and thanks to the Wanderers for being relatively calm when presented with a very public plan that got a lot of media that you were unaware of until you saw it in the media and at this committee, and I was communicating with your president who can't be here today. I guess the question is, or the part I'd like you to expand on a bit is, you talked about the history of the club. Could you outline a little bit more the condition of the clubhouse itself? Because it looks, the green looks great on the satellite photo, but if you haven't actually been in the clubhouse, how old it is and the condition of it and your aspirations for it, I think that's an important piece.
Well, the clubhouse itself right now is past its life. That's the safest way to say it. They've temporarily repaired the roof. It is the property of the city. We lease the building from the city, but it really needs to be torn down.
It's like a temporary, is it World War II or is it older than that?
It is basically they took the porch that was the original building and then turned it into the clubhouse. So it would be, so there is no foundation. It's a wooden floor on.
No further questions. Just thought that was important to highlight. Thanks, Tim.
Okay.
That's great. Any other questions? Then I have one. I'm just wondering, we've been doing the whole Commons Master Plan, and, talking with all the, different, as you said very nicely, residents of the common in that area, the Bengal Lancers. And, through your participation in the Halifax Commons Master Plan, like, what were your kind of stated aspirations there? How did you see the Lawn Bowling Club fitting in with the bigger plan?
We've been very supportive of the master plan that was presented about last year, which is in its last hearings right now. But we felt that we were very much part of the conversation. We felt that we were listened to, and we saw the things that we had brought to the table showing up in the plan. But our mandate, as I say, it's to be active, social, and community, and then try to expand our opportunity to have more people in the community participate in a sport that's really low impact and inexpensive. And that's really been our goal, is to provide that. And so being where we are, it makes us very accessible to the mainland, as well as people who are coming in on public transit.
Right. I mean, again, you largely attract often an older demographic.
And that would be our history. I would say it's been people who had, I would put, what's a nicer way to say, rather than age, I'd say people who had time to participate during daytime hours. So, and what I would say, though, is that since 2020, we have seen a significant reduction in the average age of our membership. We are seeing a number of small groups and individuals showing up at our Learn to Bowl sessions on Sunday afternoons that are open to the public, where they can come in and play. And we're seeing people who are looking for alternatives rather than having to go in. They want to meet people, but they don't want to have to necessarily go into the bars and because we've really eliminated an awful lot of social interaction amongst people. And we're seeing a lot of 30-year-olds, a lot of 40-year-olds. It's not your seniors anymore. I say we even have a youth league now on Saturday mornings with our youngest child is 9.
That's fantastic. And can you just remind me, how many lawn bowling clubs do we have in Halifax?
Currently in Halifax, we have 4. So we're Wanderers in the Commons. We'd be the largest of the 4. We'd be one of the largest actually in Canada. There's also a smaller club at St. Mary's Boathouse. There's one in Bedford and another one in Dartmouth. And Dartmouth recently just put in artificial turf. The Wanderers runs on natural turf, which is why we got to host the Canadian National Pairs.
That's great. Thank you. Thank you. I think it is an important activity for a lot of people, and a social activity as well as getting outside. And that's great. Thank you for coming and presenting this morning. Okay, to get back on track here. I think I was thrown off this morning because I've lost my coffee mug. Well, it's thrown my whole morning off. Well, I got coffee. I borrowed another mug. I'm okay on that front. Okay, so here we are, information items brought forward. There are none. And here we go to our big item of the morning. Reports. We have the playing field strategy, which I know has been a long-awaited strategy. And we have a presentation this morning from Mr. Richard Harvey, Manager of Policy and Planning. Welcome, Richard. Nice to see you.
Thank you to the chair and committee. I'm just going to bring the presentation up. So again, my name is Richard Harvey. I'm the Manager of Policy and Planning with Parks and Recreation. Behind me there is, I'll try not too hard to have too many puns, but there's a team behind me that has worked in developing this, and this has been a team effort in terms of developing a fairly comprehensive strategy that really does emanate from our Community Facilities Master Plan 2, which is our framework for municipal decision-making across recreational facilities. Now, in that CFMP2, it identified that additional focused work would need to be undertaken. And so you have a series of initiatives that come forward to you as council, with this being one of them. And that's a comprehensive look specifically at playing fields. So this really does build upon some of the themes that I'll further illuminate of the Community Facilities Master Plan, but again, as a focused amount of work. So as mentioned, the approach that we have is very similar to other types of strategies which have been forward to council and approved. This includes the long-term arena strategy and the long-term aquatic strategy, dating from 2012 and 2019. These strategies are guided by the Parks and Recreation vision and HRM's values. The approach in undertaking the strategy was really to look at demographics and service delivery, usage and participation trends, classifications and conditions, and community stakeholder consultation. That community and stakeholder consultation was really integral to the development of the strategy. It involved an online survey that was released for 2 months, in which we received over 2,500 survey responses. And associated with that, we also held focus sessions with recreation groups. And that would include both sport and recreation groups representing various different usages on playing fields. With that, in terms of analysis and findings, what we found is that there are enough playing fields across all categories. And so we're primarily looking at grass rectangular fields and ball diamonds, primarily, to meet current needs. We have identified that there are service delivery challenges and opportunities for existing playing fields. And from that, there are strategic directions and actions that are recommended in a variety of different areas. Some of the highlights from the playing field strategy and its findings is that we do have an absence, which is really something that's been a focus of our inventory in Parks and Recreation, but there has been an absence of accurate inventory information. And that was really right from the get-go of developing the playing field strategy. So it's very important to understand that part of the needs that are being improved is to understand what do we have in terms of an actual inventory. So this has really been improving with an emphasis on, through the strategy of continued improvements in data collection. What do we have for fields? How are they being used? And that also involves information from partnership organizations as well. So there's a direction to integrate all of that information to have a better understanding of our situation. There's a highlight on our hub and spoke model. That's an inherent model that comes from the Community Facilities Master Plan, in which we've got regional recreational hubs, and then supporting those hubs, we've got smaller facilities, if you like, more localized playing fields that feed into that system of what we call a hub and a spoke. Through the strategy, the development of one new hub facility is recommended. We've also made important findings with regards to municipal service delivery and partnerships, and the directions there are to recognize that service delivery in our municipality happens through a hybrid model. It's not just municipal fields, we've got partnerships, we've got post-secondary organizations. All of these and others provide a system, a hybrid system of playing field service delivery. Now, we do recognize that there are benefits to having this varied model, but it can result in inconsistent service delivery and other issues. So in recognizing that, there are recommendations to place an emphasis on municipal land ownership and management of playing fields, while also ensuring that those partnership agreements are in place with other organizations, be they be community organizations or partners such as the HRCE. In terms of scheduling and allocation, we've recognized that the current system has largely been based upon historical usage. And in looking at historical usage, that favors past users over new or emerging underserviced sports. So as like with other facilities, if you like, that we provide, there are allocation guidelines that are recommended through the strategy for playing fields. We've also observed that current playing seasons are varied and don't provide for sufficient field condition recovery. That's important in both the spring and the fall. So there are recommendations for a defined playing field season that accommodates both turf group and renewal in those seasons. Site conditions, as you can imagine, as many of you hear, at particular times, are a high priority based upon community consultation. We've identified issues in addressing conditions, which include the age of fields, poor initial construction, and school siting that we rely upon, which does result in shared use challenges, particularly for grass fields, of course. We have recommended a site assessment tool, which helps us prioritize and address field conditions. It's also been observed that the current classification system that we have, or how it is that we view fields, how it is that they are reserved, is complex. It's developed over time with a variety of different categorizations. A new classification is proposed to simplify the approach that reduces the categories and differentiates field for sport and fields for general play. So that's the major way in which those are thought about being differentiated. Field lighting is mainly over our ball fields, and community and stakeholder consultation identified field lighting as an opportunity to extend field categories, playing field categories in both categories of grass sport fields and in ball fields. But our guidance is to direct most of the field lighting to regional hubs. That's a looking forward proposition because we do have numerous ball fields which are lit. We have found with regards to all-weather fields that they have a capacity for more usage. When we look at the actual usage of all of our all-weather fields, we do find that there's quite a bit of capacity within the system. On that basis, we don't find that there is a need for additional all-weather fields beyond what we either have in place or have planned. And so additional multi-field facility, but there is an additional multi-field facility that is a potential in the longer term. So we're looking at it from a system perspective, and so we are saying, well, there may be one additional facility which is needed. We have observed that hub all-weather fields have advantages compared to single fields. And as you will all experience at many times when we have a new school renovation, there's often a call for a school all-weather field, but we don't look at those favorably in most circumstances. The strategy does set out flexibility for individual circumstances, recognizing that those occur at certain times and does recognize that. For grass sports fields, we find that, again, the municipality has enough of these facilities. But we are recognizing that as we are a fast-growing community, there may be needs and requirements for us to obtain new lands as new communities are established. Through our parkland dedication, that favors the acquisition of local, smaller areas of parkland dedication, and there is a need to look at that as new communities are developing. We have observed that with regards to the conditions of of ball diamonds, many of those have overlapping outfields. That is an approach that needs to be addressed through rationalization and improvements. It does recommend that 1 or 2 new multi-diamond complexes be developed. And we do have a need to plan and implement accessible facilities. There's quite a demand and quite an influence right now to lead us to a point of looking at accessible facilities, particularly for ball diamonds. I did mention that we do have largely enough fields to accommodate current usage. Of course, looking at ways of improving our scheduling, our actual usage of fields, classifications, but we did find that cricket grounds, in actual fact, are a growing area of sport. We only have 1 temporary cricket pitch, which isn't a full pitch. It's just simply an area that's used on the North Common of the Halifax Common. And through the strategy, we are recommending that based upon growth and the fact that we are a municipality that doesn't have a field, that a dedicated and permanent cricket ground is recommended as one of the matters to be looked at through the implementation of the strategy. The strategy, much again like other strategies, sets out implementation items. Some of these are seen as guidance items. Others have time frames for consideration that range from 1 to 3 years of up to 15 years. Of course, the adoption of the strategy would then lead to the implementation. That's not something that happens automatically. What we would do is reflect upon the strategy, both in terms of staff and ultimately council through the municipality's business and budget planning. So every year, of course, we would look at the strategy and make certain recommendations. So with that, you have the recommendation that is within the staff report, which is for the approval of the playing field strategy and the direction to the Chief Administrative Officer to identify, as just stated, the implementation within future business plans. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Richard. Questions from the committee? I don't see anybody. Oh, well, there we go. Just making sure the system's working here. Councillor Smith.
I'll speak first. I'll move the motion that the Community Planning Economic Development Standing Committee recommend the Halifax Regional Council, 1, approve the Halifax Playing Field Strategy Attachment A of the staff report dated February 1st, 2023 as a guiding municipal document for the planning, programming, operations of playing fields, and 2, direct the Chief Administrative Officer, CAO, to identify applicable implementation actions and direction as contained in the Halifax Playing Field Strategy within future business plans.
All right, seconded by Councillor Blackburn. Go ahead, Councillor Smith.
Thanks. So great to have this here. I know it's been in the works for a bit. You know, being one of the districts that have I shouldn't say one of, a few of our very busy fields for multi-use. It's great to see not only the information that's within the report to kind of put things into perspective, but also thinking of how to, I don't want to say better utilize, but that's kind of how do we better utilize all the space in the fields that we have. So I had a couple questions, and for some reason it seems like my notes have disappeared on this computer. So I wonder if I can. So I'll try to remember. I might have to come back. So one question that I had was just related to, and there's a few notes in here talking about some of our playing fields that when they're not being used, we have dog use on them. And you know, I'll use an example for myself is the Fort Nina Park. That is one that we know has always been an issue with dog users using that area. And of course we had the Argos, who were huge renters of that field, and you know, young football team, and you know, you can't have young kids falling into dog holes and stepping into dog waste. So that became a problem, so they moved to the pit, amongst other reasons. But all that to say is, I know that it's highlighted in here, but I'm just wondering, 2 things. One specifically on that field. 2 things is just thinking a little bit more about if you can just speak to what do you think the moving forward could be to deal with those type of issues. I know looking at designating more off-leash parks, et cetera, is mentioned in there, but I know the maintenance aspect is where it really comes down, and, you know, getting folks out there to fill in holes and to clean up, that's just a lot of work on our end, and we shouldn't expect the renters or the users to do that. So I'm just wondering plans on that. Specifically on that field, though, when I'm looking at, I don't think we get as much use in terms of bookings on that space, and it made me think of when you brought up the cricket, like that might be actually a great space to put a full pitch cricket field. I don't even know how big a cricket field and pitch needs to be, but understanding that we don't get the same booking uses there, that might be a good place to designate, because I know that the football teams, I don't think they're going to go back to the Fort Needham. And I know I had another question that was, the other one was related to the lighting strategy, which I don't know where that's at and how that comes into play with this report. And I think that those were my only questions.
There's a bit there to unpack, so I'll do my best. Come back to me if I don't. So the field in question is, you're absolutely right. It does have, much like many of our playing fields, it does have informal dog use. Fort Needham Park is an area where there actually is an off-leash area that does not include the actual field itself, but we all know that those get informal uses. In many of our areas that are populated, our off-leash entire approach just has some challenges in it, because we are recognizing that some of these fields are going to be used either formally or informally for this use, so there's a bit of a fine balance. We wouldn't have an automatic solution, if you like, if we do know there's an off-leash area at Fort Needham, but for many of these fields that have a little bit of shared use, particularly in an urban context, if we simply disallowed it without, whereas we take more of an approach of trying to manage it and control it, we'd have a significant problem. We wouldn't have an automatic place to go. So that's how we look at that. We do have an entire off-leash area program that we have largely at least put enough priorities into capital that they're off-leash areas that are under development. They are anticipated, many of you councillors would have areas that are being planned and developed over time. So I don't have an immediate solution to that, in all honesty, but we do have an off-leash program, and it is something that we will be coming back to council with for an update. But that's the tension in that particular field. There is a separate off-leash area, but we do recognize that there is some informal use. Destruction of a field or otherwise would be something that we'd be keeping an eye on, and if there were continuing either dog waste problems or damage to a field, that would be something that we would address through either education or through maintenance. That particular field is probably not large enough for a full-bore cricket field. The ball would probably be tumbling into, going over. I don't think, I can't say for certain, but it is, of course, an area that could be looked at. So that's an interesting suggestion. But a cricket field is actually quite large. But I haven't looked at that field in terms of its entirety for measurements. So we can certainly take that as a suggestion.
Right. And the only one, I don't know how much time I have, but the lighting strategy, how that...
Oh, yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
So lighting strategy primarily is a project which is underway by Parks and Recreation. It's an interesting one in the sense that it has less to do, but a little bit to do with field lighting. It is more to do with walkway safety, places within parks in terms of getting from A to B. There is a component of it. So most of the directions in terms of lighting is actually contained within this strategy. That's overall directions. But so that's a little bit of differentiation between that strategy, which is underway by our group, and we can certainly have any input to you into that as well.
Yeah, I was just wondering how because I know that it was mostly around safety, just wondering if there's any connection to did you realize through doing that maybe something could be utilized within the strategy? So just wondering.
Yep, absolutely.
Thank you, Chair.
All right, Councillor Blackburn.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and thank you so very much. This is an incredible amount of work that has gone into this, and it is very much appreciated. It's always good to have a baseline and know where we're going from here, for sure. And thank you, Councillor Smith, for the question on lighting. That was going to be my question as well, because I'm sort of thinking, is lighting a way that perhaps we could sort of push off building new ball fields for a little while longer and instead install lighting at all of our major ball fields so that we can extend the playing day? And you mentioned too inconsistent delivery service, and just wondering what the challenge is going to be going forward of groups, volunteers, whatever, going outside of HRM to jump the queue basically to get what they want. I'm just thinking specifically of a group of ball fields in my district that got a provincial grant for lighting after, we've been working with them for a long time on that issue, and it wasn't happening fast enough, so they've gone outside. And I'm just wondering if you could speak to that challenge. Thank you.
So, Madam Chair, the emphasis in the strategy in many ways is to look at efficiencies within our existing system. How can we be more efficient? Because of course, new playing fields are a major expense. So that you're certainly right in terms of lighting.
Then again, so is lighting, but I'm assuming that lighting is a little bit cheaper than a brand new field build.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
but costs are very high. So the first thing that we would do is look at the system of where it is that we have park lighting in terms of fields, look at the scheduling allocations, and can we do better in terms of, again, the scheduling, where it is that we look at the field allocations, and just making sure that we've considered all of those things before we do anything new. Of course, where there's merit, what you're saying is absolutely true. Field lighting, in many ways, extends times, extends availability of things. But the major emphasis, again, would be to look at what do we have right now, which seems strange to have highlighted, but it is an important highlight. Knowing what we have right now, knowing what the usage in actual fact has been a challenge. It's been one of the challenges in terms of starting with a strategy. We're getting a better handle on that. We're placing a much greater emphasis on that. And that way we're able to respond and say, what is it that we need? Where is it that we need? And do we need something new? That would be the last bit of point. Of course, it's difficult in many times because we're also working with partnership groups that are also, sometimes in some cases they do own fields and have different ambitions around all of those. So strengthening partnerships and being able to work with community groups is a strong part of this strategy, of course, while also placing an emphasis on municipal ownership in terms of the service delivery. So no easy answer again, but the strategy does is it sets that emphasis of decision-making so we can look at things in a rational way.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Right. Councillor Daigle-Gammon.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I can go after a member of the committee if you like, as I'm a guest. Oh, okay.
Go ahead.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Madam Chair, for giving me the heads up that the playing field strategy was on the agenda. Don't always get to see every committee's agenda, so having a little advance notice was great. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been able to be here. But and thanks for the read. Did it twice. Still working to understand all of the implications of it. The structure is really nicely done. I do appreciate that. I'm a little worried about process. So the CPED committee can approve this strategy. It doesn't go to regional council. Yay. So there's a lot of councillors that this really has a big impact in the largest share. We all talk about, recreation, Parks and Rec is the place that it affects every one of us across the HRM. So a little worried that all of council isn't hearing this. So that's a little worrisome. There are some words in here, Richard, that I'm trying to understand. A couple of things then. Only 4 focus sessions on a strategy that can go 15 years. I looked in the appendix, and the descriptors are really nice. And of course, baseball is a big deal in District 1. Last year, we turned away 100 kids because there wasn't enough baseball fields. And we couldn't do that. This year, we lost a baseball field for a very good reason, but that equates to another 40 kids that get displaced from baseball. So in our community, we see a huge need. So when we say that the guide for field lighting, the guidance is to go to regional hubs, when I read the report, it almost feels like hubs, where are hubs? Are they urban? Because they look urban as I read the report. And of course, District 1 is suburban and rural. We don't have transit in District 1, so getting kids to a game is a big deal. And so there's another phrase that's in there that's called rationalization. And I would really like a definition of what that means, because when I read it, my mind goes to a lot of places. Some of it's good, some of it's not. So I'd like to know what rationalization actually, what it really means when we're talking about how fields are used, how they're determined. Thanks.
And Chair, one of the very interesting one of the circumstances of our situation is we have so many varied historical and individual circumstances. So I think the Councillor is quite right. In your particular district, as an example, we have a current project to light an individual field. But those are the circumstances around that individual circumstance. So there are always going to be, if you like, almost exceptions to a direction. For all kinds of good reasons.
Right.
What the strategy does is it places an emphasis that if you could, what you should, if you like, what you should do is this. It doesn't mean that you wouldn't, or it doesn't mean that there aren't individual circumstances and those don't necessarily
Oh, I might
change.
hold you to that. I'm going to put it on video. I'm going to cut
No,
it.
but it is the circumstance that we find. We are not a sort of a, brand new municipality without either these partnership groups or relationships or historical circumstances. So the direction is where you can, this is the direction you should follow. But again, it doesn't mean that there aren't individual circumstances.
Okay.
Council's well aware that we have, although we've been very clear in saying that we have enough, if you like, all-weather fields to accommodate existing usage, we do find ourselves sometimes in interesting and unusual circumstances that would lead us to a different conclusion. So that's the best way I can explain that circumstances. It's those circumstances is what we're doing is we're setting directions that we would refer to say, well, if we had everything that we wanted to do or had all the options in front of us, which way should we go? So that's what that is. Rationalization is oftentimes looking at things, for example, for a ball field. Do we have overlapping fields where where that is actually restricting use? Okay. It means that possibly in that circumstance, they both can't be used at the same time.
Okay.
They could be used, if you like, for smaller children, smaller league play, but is that all we have? And if we looked at it and said we could actually increase the amount of usage for all groups by rationalizing in that type of circumstance, those are the types of things that we would look at. If we had, if you like, two fields that were underperforming, either because of their condition or their usage, could we do better by placing an emphasis on a single field and meet both community needs and, if you like, maintenance needs? We could actually improve the conditions of them. So those are two examples of what I think would, certainly, if you like, would fall under rationalization.
And through you, Madam Chair, just a comment to the councillor. The playing field strategy does in fact go to council, so the recommendation is for CPED to send it to council, so there will be a consideration by council.
As I read the motion, I didn't see it going to regional council. Does the motion reflect that?
It does in the report. I'll just.
It does in the report, but not in this motion. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Purdy.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. And thanks, Richard and team, for this. And before I ask my question, I just want to say with all the complaints that I've received with the conditions of our playing fields, our baseball fields, I mean, staff has been so quick to respond and so good at, meeting with the residents and seeing what the issues are and trying to mitigate as best as they can. So that's really appreciated and very well done. And I saw in the report the field conditions and the classifications. I mean, it's just a big complex system. So a good thing you guys are going to like take a look at that and reclassify how the fields are classified according to their conditions and such, so that's good. I'm wondering where we stand with the shared use agreement with HRCE. Last I knew, I think in the fall, last time I reached out about it, there were talks going on between HRM and HRCE about the shared use agreement. So in particular around the renting of space in our artificial turfs, I guess, for sports teams, and the expense that incurs to sports teams and how they have to like generate their money somehow. And just wondering where we stand right now with that. It's a lot of pressure for team sports to have to come up with thousands of dollars.
It's a bit of pressure on me too, so I might defer to my colleague.
Thank you. Rosalind Smith, Director of Regional Recreation Services. Good question, Councillor. So there has been no change from the fall. We are still working with HRCE on amendments to the Service Exchange Agreement. Currently, all schools have access to HRM municipal fields during the school day up until 3 p.m. Any usage after that goes by the going rate.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right, so just if I could put a little plug in there for school teams, I mean, that's when they practice, it's after, obviously, the school day, so it does put a lot of pressure on them to raise thousands of dollars to be able to pay for the space.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah, yeah.
But thank you.
Okay. Councillor Lovelace.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Really appreciate the invitation to come to CPED. You know, I appreciate the work that's gone into this. It feels like 27 years post-amalgamation, we're kind of caught up a bit, but we're not there yet. We are a huge municipality with a lot of assets. So I feel like we've done some good background work to understand what kind of assets, what the quality of the assets, what they can be used for. We see very clearly that there's lots of room for more activities. And I think it's about, you know, getting the word out there and working with the stakeholders and ensuring that they're aware of what the options are. I wanted to see a bit more emphasis on disc golf. We've had exceptional investments from community into building disc golf, both in District 13 and in District 5 in Dartmouth. And I think we've seen the results. People love it. So I just wanted to give a plug for that. The other thing I think we want to think about is the intersection between public safety office and the investments that HRM is making into public safety. Looking at the public washrooms, it was just kind of highlighted, I think, once in the report. It wasn't really, you know, thinking about, well, how do we manage all of these groups coming into this space and all of these people, and at the same time, you know, they need to fundraise for a washroom or they're using the woods, right? So I just want to talk about that and just figure out how do we mix and integrate those two pieces. And of course, there's the garbage and the illegal dumping and the vandalism that we see on our fields, and that's always concerning as well. So from a public safety perspective, I would like to see a little bit more of that in this strategy. I think, too, it's unfair to expect people to drive 20 to 30 or 45 minutes even to get to that playing field. I think the report maybe missed the opportunity to highlight transit, to highlight transit corridors. The expectation is in this strategy is that people are going to drive at least 20 minutes anyway. And, you know, as you know, in the rural areas of HRM, we struggle to have those resources and have those assets and have the means to be able to move people around to access recreation and sport. And a lot of times, too, when we're talking about sports that have advanced significantly, like baseball, we're growing athletes who are competing provincially, regionally, nationally. So I think it's important for us to also think about what does that mean to grow an athlete and to nurture those athletes. And the other thing I guess I'll say is it'll be interesting to see in a couple of years what these numbers actually look like from participation trends, because we're talking about older numbers, right, from 5 years ago and pre-COVID. And so thinking about the population growth that we've had in the last couple of years and what those participation trends are actually going to look like, and how will this strategy actually intersect and develop to acknowledge that growth, but also to build that growth and to move those opportunities forward. So I think that the strategy maybe falls a little bit short on looking at ways to actually advance some of these sports. I think what we've done here is a good background document, but I'd like to see how we're actually going to grow these sports. Thank you so much. And yes, I know that this is not specifically to growing sports, it's about the playing field strategy, but this is the foundation for a lot of these sports, especially cricket. Yay, we're going to catch up. Well, we won't catch up to PEI, but we're getting kind of close. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Councillor Lovelace. There's no other members of the committee. You want to speak? I have a couple of questions for you. Top of my list was about the growth strategy, as Councillor Lovelace was just talking about, and how we really, focus the smaller fields, the local fields, on promoting walkable communities, like looking at some of our other strategies and ensuring that all our communities have adequate playing fields, not just the regional hubs, and how, back to the, cricket was also on my list here. The demand that I understand from the Cricket Association is that there's over 500 people on the waiting list, and that even having one cricket field wouldn't get us anywhere near a PEI. The timing of that, I think, is important. So when I read the report, I see that it's recognized, but I don't see a timeline. And how long will it take for us to get a proper cricket field? Is that something that we could accelerate? Because we know the demand is there, the community is there, they're asking for this. Even if we had 3 cricket fields, I think that they would all be well used. It's a thriving sport. And also, I think when I look at Graves Oakley, opportunity between rugby and cricket and the clubhouse, and how we work with those other community facilities to, ensure that the fields are getting used, and also the other amenities that we've invested in are really being kind of used to their potential as well. I am interested in the timeline for a proper cricket field, where we are on that. I'm also, I'm surprised about the absence of accurate inventory, and I don't understand why that is at this point. Why do we not have a handle on that inventory? Who manages those fields? Easy access to that information. I'm just surprised that was a barrier or a challenge in actually doing this report, was that lack of information. And what do we need to do to get that information, ensure it's accurate? The hub and spoke model, I understand that, and I think having regional hubs is a good idea, where we have enhanced facilities for that. But also, one of the things I hear again when I look at Graves Oakley and how that's working is that sometimes the local needs, it's kind of seen as a local asset, but it gets booked regionally, and so the local use doesn't always get prioritized. That's what I hear. I don't know if we can talk about that. And I know there's a lot about equity and fairness across sports. But the other challenge with Graves Oakley is that it has become our rugby fields. And so how do you provide that equity, but also recognizing that those fields have been built and designed for specific use, and how do we ensure that specific use also gets prioritized? And the seasonal openings and closings of the field, our weather patterns are changing. I know that we have a very, I forget what the date is, I think it's in end of May or something, May, when we open up our playing fields. But sometimes, the April could be gorgeous, and, you're sitting there looking at a field and no one could book it. With changing weather patterns, I'm just wondering how those opening dates work and the closing dates, and when exceptions can be made to say, you know what, it's a bright sunny day, the field is dry, there's no reason why somebody can't be using it. How we can build in some flexibility to accommodate different sports. I have a whole bunch of other questions too, but also about lighting. I said the lighting was really focused on ball diamonds. And again, back to the rugby fields and the football fields, like putting in lighting there, like was there any consideration about that? How we don't just look at baseball, but look at the other sports as well, soccer. And yeah, I'll leave it there for now. I think I can come to you offline with some of my other questions.
I'm actually responding to you, Madam Chair. I'm going to go through kind of quickly, and then, of course, we can certainly take any conversations offline for more detailed conversations. In terms of the growth of the city and new sport fields or new playing fields, it is one of the things that's recognized as an issue because, of course, the primary way in which we obtain parkland dedication from growth doesn't lead to those sized fields. So what we're then doing is relying upon the construction of schools for new playing fields. We're recognizing that as an issue that needs to be addressed because as we grow, we may not be getting localized playing fields. So that's on our radar, and that is something of a consideration. In terms of cricket, the recommendation in the report is an implementation or an addressing of this within 1 to 3 years. So that would involve having to explore a siting and the development in partnership with a cricket organization. So that's seen as a fairly quick priority in terms of the actual delivery, but there would be a lot involved with that. The situation with the inventory is really one in which there's such a great degree of complexity. You have fields which are that are exclusively owned by the municipality. You have fields which have that are under partnership, which may not be a formalized partnership, could be an informal partnership, which would be true of your district as well. If we think about Westover and what's happened in over time, we have a hybrid sometimes of those arrangements where sometimes we've gone and dumped some soil for a community group to sort of be involved with. Some of the scheduling of those fields has taken place by different organizations. So getting a handle right at the outset of what we have for an inventory has been fairly complex. Now, the good news side of things is many of the improvements that are recommended in this strategy have already been underway. We have a much greater sense of inventory of how all of these things are working, the scheduling, and it is certainly a focus of the department at this particular point in time. We are looking at developing a robust asset inventory, and those are the improvements that are already underway. But your question, how is this a circumstance? It just simply is for all of those reasons. Graves Oakley, you are right in terms of having some specialized fields there, but even one of the images in this strategy is of mini soccer taking place on those. So we recognize how these fields are multi-purpose in many ways, and those are important things. The opening dates in terms of fields and the flexibility associated with it, there's a strong recommendation in the playing field strategy that although you may get dry spells and otherwise, it's really important to stick for a whole bunch of reasons to established outdoor playing field dates because springtime is so variable. Even though you may get a spell of weeks where you may get some dryness, that can then turn fairly wet. But most importantly, those complaints that you will often receive in the summer about the field condition is largely because those shoulder seasons are times at which those fields need to recover. It's identified as recovery times. So it's really important, even though you've got maybe dealing with fantastic weather, to kind of stick with that. Also, from a scheduling perspective, is it leads to predictability and regularity in terms of many of the teams that book these fields schedule things as well. So it's a strong recommendation not to be variable in that. The lighting, in actual fact, does serve as a solution in many ways for ball field, but not so much for grass field, because those grass fields will get overused, and that's one of the issues. So once you have too much use, which would extend into the evening, those fields will then become worn, and much as the same issue in terms of shoulder seasons, you don't get enough rest time on those fields. So the emphasis for actual sport fields is for lighting to be more focused onto these regional hubs in many ways, and not onto those local fields, so that you don't get overuse. It's a different situation with ball diamonds. I think I got them.
Yeah, that was good. So, yeah, I'll circle back to you about some specifics on Graves Oakley. But do we have any more questions? Yes, Councillor Smith.
I found my notes. Last question is transitioning fields. So I won't speak to a specific issue. I'm sure you know what I'd be referencing if I did. But within the report, it doesn't talk about, when you're transitioning a field from one sport to another, and how you deal with it, but also how we're going to have to deal with the ongoing pressures of some sports wanting longer seasons and some other sports wanting to stay the same, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm just wondering how you are going to manage that ever-growing, we need more time for our sport, don't transition it from one sport to another. For example, if those don't know, you have to put up the field post for a football team, and you might have soccer nets, or you might be set up for whatever. Just wondering how that is going to be worked into the future strategies of understanding how that transition can happen and it's somewhat seamless now, but I feel like it's going to get a little bit more combative between some of the people who are in the sports associations who want that to be different.
I'll take an initial swing at it, but if it's not sufficient, we probably have some staff that can talk about the individual transition of a field. Essentially, we recognize particularly sort of grass sports fields as being multi-purpose. So inherently, they have that ability to accommodate difference. Even in a transition of just 1 hour to another. Same thing with our all-weather. We often think of our all-weather as being sometimes soccer fields or football fields, but in actual fact, they'd be the places where you're seeing, you're actually seeing a multitude of different, sports played on those. Everything ranging, for example, lacrosse would be something that you'd see on that. That transition actually happens fairly well and fairly seamlessly. It's where you get into specialized fields. Ball diamonds are a different deal altogether. We are having other sports booking ball diamonds for, if you like, almost grass sport playing. That's a challenge. That's an issue that we hope to resolve through scheduling and being more purposeful with things. Because of course, if you're using the outfield of the grassed area of a ball diamond or a ball field, that's quickly going to become a bit of a condition usage. So possibly, Councillor, if there are any other sort of more specific questions, we can do that. But from an overall perspective, if we are transitioning, for example, from one type of specialized field to another, recognizing the emergence of other sports and otherwise, that needs to happen in a careful, managed way. It's not something that's an automatic change. Even the changes that are recommended in here as changing or making a focus on rationalizing fields, it's not an instant thing. It's not like we're all going to be, as of tomorrow type of thing. There's all of a sudden going to be massive changes. We have to be reflective of budgets and just working with community partners, and when those things happen where it makes sense.
Yeah, and my only question was really related to, so you answered it, I just want to be clear about that. And so not seeing that there was any reference and recommendations related to that. So it seems like you're going to continue to do it as you do, case by case, specialized fields. Nothing was highlighted that you felt that with the ongoing demand and the growing demand that you need to change your approach of transitioning fields at all. So that's really my wonder. So you're saying that you feel that it's still good in the way that it happens. Okay, great, thanks. Thank you, Chair.
All right, Councillor Daigle-Gammon.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. A curiosity question, the online survey had 2,500, I think, and the 4 focus sessions had good representation. Do we ever, and I understand that the strategy is an HRM strategy, but do we go back to them and say, here's what we've come up with? What are your thoughts on that?
As much as you get phone calls, my colleague to the right
Yes, indeed.
gets consistent feedback. And, and so in terms of developing the strategy, yes, we would have had focus sessions with those groups. What our test would be is working with, if you like, our staff that would be working directly with those groups, is to say, well, is there something that's changing? Is there something that's, this isn't reflective? We all know that we are going to be faced with ongoing, regular demands, not enough. You do something different, do something otherwise. But I think I would be fair to say that I don't believe that there's something that's fundamental in this that wouldn't be reflected through those stakeholder engagements. So we will get reflections over time, and we will make adjustments to the way in which we proceed with things. So we're always open to that feedback, and there may be something even in here that perhaps when we really unpack it and work with it, we've got to adjust, and we would come back and revisit that.
Right.
Again, this is not an instant change. It's what it is it's reflective of directions that we would be receiving. But always, we're always going to be getting feedback. You will be getting feedback. We will be getting feedback, and we'll reflect on those things. And as we go about it, we can make adjustments.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. I don't see any more speakers on the list, so I'll say thank you very much for the presentation, and have the question. Call for the question. All those in favor? Opposed? All right, that motion passes. Thank you. Okay, so members of standing committee, none. Motions, none. In camera, none. Added items. Any added items? Nope. Notices of motion. Any notices of motion? Nope. Public participation. We don't have any registered speakers, so I don't see anyone in the gallery, but I will call 3 times to ask if there are any further speakers. Any further speakers? And any further speakers? No. All right, the date of our next meeting is March 23rd, 2023. And with that, I'll ask for adjournment. Thank you, Councillor Deputy Mayor Austin.